Are you, Gaardsy, in the I've got a fever, and the only thing I need is more Bakhtiari? David Bakhtiari's name continues to come up and resonate. The former Packer All-Pro. Not just Pro Bowl, All-Pro.
He was good.
I think he was a 4 or 5 year All-Pro guy. He's out there. Now, the question is whether he literally has anything left in his knees, because he's had a series of issues. Our guy, did you see the report filed by our guy, Tiny Joe Nelson?
No.
He writes that Bakhtiari came back in 2022, played 11 games, and then big things expected in 2023. I don't even remember this. He says this time it wasn't his ACL or MCL. It wasn't even cartilage. It was damage to the femoral condyles. Do you even know what that is?
I assume it's in the femur.
Condyles, which are two rounded bumps at the bottom of the femur that help form the knee joint. That, too, had been damaged in his initial injury on New Year's Eve 2020. He underwent another season-ending surgery and has not played since. Here's the way Tiny Joe, the Viking fan rube in him, speaking. He's out there lurking in free agency and probably itching to latch on with a contender. He said in June that he has more gas in the tank. And, of course, if he came to Minnesota, who would he be reunited with? Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, yeah.
So, my guess is that they would have to explore it. You'd at least have to kick the tires.
Kick the tires,
right?
yes.
At this point, what do you have to lose?
Exactly.
On the other hand, if he literally can't move or he can't pass the physical, then as arousing as the name is, because you hear the name and you assume we're going to get Bakhtiari?
Right.
Oh, my God. You're thinking you're going to get the guy who's going to wake up the echoes of being an all-pro player. It'd be a hell of a story. Hell of a story if he can anchor the left side, the blind side of any right-handed quarterbacks and the offensive line. So a lot of texters have brought up his name.
Yeah.
Carl Gerbschmidt has not brought up his name yet, but now Tiny Joe Nelson has tried to do some deep diligence on the possibility of us exploring the Bakhtiari option.
Tiny Joe continued on Twitter. I just looked 10 minutes ago. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
He's continuing to try to make the case for Bakhtiari. He just writes, David Bakhtiari knows how to block for Aaron Jones, prevents Vikings from falling off without Darisaw, isn't a long-term commitment, doesn't cost the Vikings draft picks, is elite when healthy. We don't have a show tonight. Enough said.
Can you argue with any of that?
All of that is true.
It's 100% true.
I'm a little concerned if he said he had gas in the tank in June. Did he go anywhere to try out with anybody? Did anybody bring him in for a workout?
That's a fair question.
Everyone's looking for left tackles.
A couple of snarky ones have also suggested that if he really did have anything left, he'd already be a New York Jet.
My first inclination.
Right.
I think they have a pretty good left tackle now. I don't remember.
I think you're right, actually.
But that's what I thought. If he did have gas in the tank, A-Raj would have made that happen already.
Do we need to put $1,000 in somebody's hand?
We would love to try. It'd be a great way to start the weekend. The Fan and two men and a junk truck. Want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand. It is our
junk in the trunk, you say?
You could. Junk truck. Two men and a junk truck. Want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand. Our keyword for the 4 o'clock hour is win. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword win.
We got a lot of good Vikings talking points to get to. I don't want to let this show, get much further or much closer, I guess I should say, to the finish line without at least getting to one right here in this segment before we prepare for Ben Goessling at the bottom of the hour. We've talked a lot about the defense and some about the offense, but I want to stick with the defense. I call this Vikings talking point, the Flonami has suddenly become a gentle wave on your favorite beach.
7-0 Minnesota. Stafford back to pass, throws to the end zone, caught, touchdown. It's a touchdown for the LA Rams, and it's Kyren Williams with his second receiving touchdown this year. He has 10 touchdowns on the season, and that score means Kyren Williams has scored in 10 consecutive games, which ties a Rams record held by running back Greg Bell from the late 80s at 7-6. Left and right, Vikes rush 4. Stafford trying to get away from the pressure.
Oh,
and
come on!
Throws to the end zone, touchdown.
Oh, my God.
There were 2 Vikings who had dead aim at Matthew Stafford, who leaves the field probably yelling something at Kevin O'Connell that's not like super bad, but he was yelling at the Vikings bench. And Matthew Stafford has thrown 2 touchdowns. It is 14-13 Minnesota. What the heck happened? How did we not sack him?
That's exactly what I'm saying. How do you let one of the most immobile quarterbacks in the league get out of that?
Stafford, 2nd and 8 out of the shotgun. Fade right to the end zone to Robinson, and he caught it. Touchdown, LA Rams. Flag on the play. Demarcus Robinson with an awesome catch. Front right of the end zone. If it sticks, that'll be his 2nd touchdown this season. It is 3rd and 4 for the LA Rams as Stafford runs up to the rookie center and points to his right. Kyren Williams, his hands outstretched like he doesn't know what's happening. Stafford takes the snap. Bernard's trying to bear down on him. Stafford fires to the end zone. Caught. Demarcus Robinson, touchdown. And he was wide open. 2 touchdowns for Demarcus Robinson. Matthew Stafford has thrown 4 touchdowns in the game and has done so for the first time since November of last year. And the LA Rams have extended the lead to 27-20.
Too easy. Even granted that Stafford is a damn good quarterback at his advanced age, he got back 2 legitimate wide receivers, right? We grant all that. They do have a very smart, talented offensive mind as their head coach. But the contrast was startling, and we're going to get to some offensive Vikings talking points before this show is done. But the contrast, the startling part to me of the contrast was that both teams were moving the ball pretty easily in the first half, right? At least for the early section. They kept moving it for touchdowns. We eventually had to settle for what? Field goals. Mm-hmm. If we got anything out of various drives. And so to an extent, as we've talked about almost from the start of the show, the Flonami, so dangerous, so devastating to opposing teams' offenses, has indeed suddenly become this gentle wave on the beach that you wouldn't give a second thought to. They have plenty of time to think about it. They know that they have quarterbacks who aren't as capable coming up. But as we said, if your big goal is to be a factor in January, if you still presume you're right in the middle of the playoff race, and you are, then it's about reaching a point where even against good quarterbacks, you have an effective enough defense to think that you might be able to get something done in the postseason, at least a little ways. Real quick, the follow-up on Sean, what I talked about at the end with Sean Salisbury. As he says, I get that fans are frustrated. Darrisaw is a big loss. But it's not like, see, to me, recklessness with the ball in the situation the Vikings were in would have been, leap it. We do what we do. We're going to have our quarterback fade into our own end zone and fling it 3 straight times. That, to me, would have been reckless given you're at the 2.5. But handing the ball off is the oldest approach in the book, which is chances are we're going to get 5 yards, and then if we do, we take the knee. But what if we get 26? Then we're close to the 30. And then we go, we got a kicker who's very good. Maybe we can steal 3 points. We know who's going to get the ball to start the second half. So to, in any way, shape, or form, blame this cataclysmic injury on the head coach, I think it's just plain asinine. The frustration level, I get. But what the Vikings did in that situation, I think most teams are going to do. Not all of them, but I think the percentage of teams and coaches who are likely to take the approach O'Connell did is actually 80% now. Once upon a time, the league was different. Probably 80% would have been, we're not messing with it. We're going to take a knee. I don't worry about a fumble, anything weird happening, penalties, whatever. But now it's generally, to me, this is the right move. The right move is definitely for me not to throw in that situation.
No chance you throw.
The right move is hand the ball off and see if you get lucky on it. If you don't, we're done. And we'll go to the locker room. We'll try to figure something out. We'll see if we can bring the Flonami back for the second half. We're in Southern California, not that far from the Pacific Ocean.
So the Flonami has basically become that camera that you have on your laptop computer that shows Black Rock at Kaanapali Beach, right? That when you want to light your candle and get some zen,
that's it.
You check out the Maui wave cam.
It's a very gentle.
What's going on there.
I think it might actually be gentler than because some of those waves can get a little angry.
They can. They knocked my mother-in-law over on our trip there.
Very true, but they're not Flonami like when the Flonami seemed to be this sort of irrepressible force.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody's going, what are we going to do with the Flonami? No life preserver is going to help us here. We're going to need more than that. We're going to need a bigger boat for sure.
You had football guys breaking down the All-22 going, I have no idea what they're doing.
Yes.
I've played this game. I've played defense. I don't know what defense they're in. I don't know how they got here. They did this coverage, and now they're doing that, and they did it all on the fly. That seems like a long time ago. The Alec Lewis numbers from The Athletic that are pretty amazing, and they check out the eye test. None of the Vikings' primary pass rushers were within 4 yards of Stafford at the time of his throws. Rams receivers average more than 3 yards of separation. That's an ass kicking.
Yeah,
just every step of the way.
Yes, top to bottom. There's no question about. And Bursic was angry because I like him view Stafford as a guy who's a statue.
That was unbelievable.
But in all honesty, occasionally he can still do that.
Yeah,
he can wiggle free, and he's one of those guys who's smart enough to know I'm not good enough to run it. I got to find out if then I could find a receiver, which he did. But it was the worst combo platter. No meaningful pressure. They never sacked them, and presumably you'd say, well, that's because we've got 8 in coverage and there's no place for the quarterback to go. There were places for the quarterback to go all night, and a lot of it was short stuff, getting rid of it quick, intermediate stuff, 8 yards. We got receivers who are physical enough that maybe they get another 6 or 7 yards out of it. And to me, that's quickly becoming the Achilles heel of this defense. And again, God bless Cashman.
Yeah.
But if he's as important as now is being very conveniently suggested.
Right.
He's the most underpaid player in football history.
He is. He needs a contract extension right now.
His agents should be saying, wait a minute. You got to double whatever we were at before. Ben Goessling, he's had a chance to digest it. He was in Southern California to chronicle the Thursday night football debacle. We'll see what is on his mind, what he is hearing regarding options to replace the irreplaceable left tackle Christian Darrisaw. Fridays usually means a preview of the upcoming Sunday or Monday night or Sunday night Minnesota Vikings game with Ben Goessling. But in this case, it's reviewing what took place last night where Ben was Los Angeles, California. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline brought to you by our good friends at Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. I want to get to spend some time early on the offense and your reaction to the news regarding the left tackle. But I want to play a Vikings talking point that I like to call, do we need a Justin Jefferson ratio?
But again, JJ across the middle of the field, Paul, they really haven't slowed that down at all today. So keep going at it. But what a great step up in the pocket by Darnold.
Darnold 13 of 16, 146 and 2. He's out of the shotgun on first down, puts Josh Oliver in motion to the right. Sam back to pass, fade, left at about the 10. It's bobbled.
Are you kidding me?
Caught by Justin Jefferson
kidding me?
at the 5-yard line. He's putting on a show right next to Hollywood, and that's a 22-yard gain. First and goal for the Minnesota Vikings.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're listening to us on radio in the car, but go home and watch that one on TV.
That was the circus catch, I think rightly called a catch. And I think that's the last time, other than the helmet throw, that we saw JJ. No fourth quarter targets for him after being, what you had in your game, or was it like 13 out of 16 play? It was some ridiculous ratio early of his involvement. So what happens? Are we obsessing too much over these details in a loss, or should there be some legitimate concern about almost forcing a way to keep JJ having a chance to keep giving him the opportunities to make plays like that throughout the game?
Yeah, I mean, it has been noticeable in the sense the last couple of weeks where he is either the first half against the Lions or the second half last night kind of taken out of the game. I mean, we see teams throwing coverage at him over and over, and that's obviously to try to get the Vikings to go somewhere else. But I do wonder at times if you just say, forget it, let's get him the ball and see what happens. I mean, I think the third quarter against the Lions on Sunday, they started, I think the first 3 plays of the second half, they went to him and tried to base it around that. And I think last night it was 13 of the first 18 plays with either Justin Jefferson or Aaron Jones. And when he makes the kinds of catches that he does, and he beats you in so many different ways, whether it's going over the top, I think he's gotten better at finding space in the middle of zones. He's good at everything. And I think it becomes a thing where when you are struggling offensively, the simplest way to get things moving is to find ways to get him the ball, even if that means trying to do so with defenders paying a lot of attention to him. Because one of the things that I think they've been missing is the kinds of contributions from Jordan Addison that they thought they were probably going to get. Yeah. He has not been as impactful as I think they thought he would be. Hawkinson probably changes this math a little bit, but yeah, I do think there's some sense to say, let's just get JJ the ball and see what happens.
Are you vetting the David Bakhtiari option? Because, as you know, the name, people, A, love saying the name. B, they love remembering how good he was in his prime. They leave out, well, that guy might not exist anymore. I think he's available, but is he available because no one thinks that he has the ability at this point to physically stay upright long enough to be a factor? Is there any chance for a miracle Bakhtiari play by the Minnesota Vikings?
I mean, I suppose there is, but it is, for a guy that was as accomplished as he has been in Green Bay, the fact that he has been a free agent really since March is, I think, worth considering. He had that ACL, I think, at the end of 2020, right before the Packers went into the playoffs, and then had a lot of knee stuff kind of after that. I mean, he really struggled to be as durable after that ACL as he had been early in his career. So I'm sure that's part of what they would have to consider if they were to go down that road. I mean, you may look at different things because you losing your left tackle is not something you could kind of just shrug off at any time. So I'm sure they'll look at all of those options, but his durability would be, I think, the big question I would have there if they were going to go down that road.
So we've explored a lot regarding the defensive breakdowns the last couple of weeks. We probably haven't on this show spent enough time on the times that the defense actually did force fourth downs, but those occasions were nullified by penalties that several times, was it 3, 4, 5 times, kept Rams drives alive. So what do you think the internal reaction is to what's taken place this last couple weeks? I laid this out with Salisbury. You know the numbers well. Just in the last 2 weeks alone, drives yielded of 69, 89, or I should say 83, 72, 70, 4 70-yard drives by the Rams, not to mention in the second half of that Green Bay game, 89 and 96 yards. So how concerned do you think they are? And I have a hard time believing all of it is explained by the loss of Cashman.
Yeah, I would think they're fairly concerned. I mean, I think a lot of this is going to be, I mean, Kevin O'Connell talked about this a little bit today, trying to look for answers this weekend. I asked him, how much stock do you put in, hey, we've had a lot of issues the last couple of weeks, or do you say it's 2 games in 4 days, it's accomplished quarterbacks, you're going to get beat sometimes, there's no need to throw the baby out with the bathwater? And he said, you kind of have to go big picture and say, what has happened and why are we getting beat in these different spots? And the penalties have certainly been part of it. I think it was 3 first downs last night. But the bigger concern to me is they have been beaten in a similar fashion twice this week, and you are going to see a lot of teams copy that. I mean, Shaq Griffin said it. I think a number of other players said it last night as well, that you're going to see teams do these same things to them until they show that they can stop it. And I wonder, I mean, it still played a lot of zone coverage, which I think is obviously part of what they want to do. All the quarter stuff that Brian Flores plays is a big part of it, but they have talked about playing more man. I wonder if that would be something they would try a little bit more, or if they're worried about, can these corners at this point in their career cover in that fashion? And really, I mean, they are built front to back. I mean, they are built to get a pass rush that affects everything else, and they did not do that last night. And I think that becomes one of the bigger concerns as well, because that was part of the undoing last season when the defense started to crumble, as they just weren't getting home very much. And they need to be better in that regard. I think that's a lot of where you're starting to see things come apart, when these quarterbacks have time to sit and decipher what's going on. And if you can keep your quarterback up, you can decipher any defense out there, no matter how complex it may look. So I think that's a lot of the issue here as well.
What do you see schematically or philosophically that the last two teams have done? I mean, do you view the approach as very similar, even though the Lions and Rams are different offenses? They come from the same philosophy, obviously. Or do you see, were there specific, what exactly have they figured out? Is it mainly about getting rid of the ball quickly, not worrying if it's a 9-yard pass, and just making sure you're max protecting in a way that your quarterback's going to have, not going to need a lot of time if it's a quick pass, but is going to be pretty much safe? What do you see what are the common threads that you're seeing?
Yeah, there have been a few things that have stuck out there. You've seen a little bit more max protect. The Lions certainly did that, where they were bringing receivers across the formation to actually just chip an edge rusher and say, we don't need to worry about this guy because we're taking him out of the play, which I think on a couple of those, that gave Jared Goff time to go downfield. But you've also seen teams, the Rams did a lot of this last night, where it's quick passes and screens to get rid of the ball, and then you turn some fakes off of those screens where you get people flowing one way, and they have the wheel route on the one, I think. But some of it is, let's get rid of the ball to mitigate the pass rush, but then let's also see if these corners can tackle and run in the open field. I think that's been a little bit of the formula as well. And then the stuff that we've seen, and this I think is where Cashman's loss does come in. I mean, we've made a lot out of the Cashman absence, and maybe a little bit too much, but with regard to the middle of the field, that I think has been an area where they've been exploited over these last couple of games, because it is easier, I think, to get a beat on what they're doing when you don't have Cashman and pace. And then Cashman just shrinks so much space in the middle of the field. So you saw them get picked on there last night. That almost reminded me a little bit of that Giants playoff loss a couple of years ago, where just the crossing routes over the middle were easy money for the Giants. And I think with Cashman being out, that's been something teams have exploited a little bit there too.
We are chatting with Ben Goessling, back from Los Angeles, California, where the Vikings took it on the chin again last night, 30-20. If you have questions for Ben, the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is, as most of you know by now, 64686. So let's look more internal, or not just internal. I mentioned Bakhtiari. It sounded from the presser we played the early portion of with KOC at the top of the 3 o'clock hour that, you know, they're thinking some stuff through, and they're trying to be as creative as possible. And I assume that means maybe some internal ideas, but also some external ideas. Are there some linemen that we know that are out there that perhaps are healthier than Bakhtiari, that may not have his lineage, may not have his reputation, but might well be a step up over who the Vikings are trying to, in the meantime, force into play the very important left tackle position?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a position that is going to be difficult to replace. I mean, just because the importance of a guy that you have in that spot. I mean, I think that's always going to be, a hard thing to do on the fly. I mean, there are guys out there. I mean, you could talk about, I think Cam Robinson and, guys that are kind of in that age 30 range, Andres Pete. I mean, guys that have played in the league for a long time that I suppose they could look at. I mean, I think guys that have played with the Rams are probably going to be options for them if they're going to go look at something. And I think if you're going to do it, a trade there would make some sense.
Yep.
If it's somebody that's a little bit younger that you may be able to keep in the mix, because the timing of this Darrisaw injury is going to make it difficult to get everybody back for next or get him back right for the start of training camp next year. So it is going to be one of those things where if you have another option that you feel okay about, at least into next season, I think that's something to explore as well. I mean, there's a few ways they could go with trades, but I think that becomes one of those things now where if it's somebody that's a little younger that can help you now and help you in the future, that becomes a place to look as well. And then I think the first option internally is going to be David Quessenberry. They like him a lot as a swing tackle. I think, obviously he stepped in there last night, and he's kind of been the first place that they turn when he has to step in at either left or right tackle. So I think they'd look at him, and then Walter Rouse, their rookie, is probably going to get a little bit longer look to see if he can step in either as that swing tackle or possibly as an option at some point too. So that's probably where you start. And then I think looking at any other option that may be out there is probably going to be in their to-do list here this weekend.
Let's listen to the PA call on the missed face mask penalty that resulted in the safety and that effectively ended the ball game.
2nd and 10 from the 5. Darnold back to pass. 4-man rush. Sam looking to throw from the end zone. It's a safety and the game is over. Byron Young threw down Sam Darnold in the end zone. And it's a safety. There are no flags on the play. The Rams have taken a 30-20 lead.
I think Darnold was yanked down by his face mask. And
I don't see a flag.
I know, and I don't think you're going to get it. That's not a play that you can review. But watch as he comes around, and he totally gets pulled down.
Yeah, look at Darnold, outstretched arms.
Wow.
Screaming at Trey Blake. So was Kevin O'Connell.
Byron Young just... Oh, absolutely, that was a face mask.
Oh, wow.
But they don't call it.
This is the maddest I've ever seen Kevin O'Connell on a sideline while coach of the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, I mean, you put yourself in that position. The team's done that all night. And, when you put it on that and the referees miss a call like that, it's devastating. Yeah, it's terrible that they missed that call. It should have been an automatic first down. You have 1:36 to go. You have some momentum, some opportunity, but wow.
Well, after doing what looked to be a pretty fair country job, we got Trey Blake again.
Yeah, we did.
There it is. Those guys do such a great job on the broadcast, and we love playing every week. That's what gives us the Vikings talking points. They're entertaining. They're funny. They're very honest, actually. And I tend to agree, Ben Goessling, with the Bursich philosophy, which was, they 100% blew the call. There's not any doubt about that. But that I'm just not going to put it real high on my list in terms of explaining the loss, what contributed to the loss. The Vikings, despite what they had done up till then, deserved the opportunity to see if they could, they could fashion a miracle. But I don't know. I given the circumstances, I don't know that a congressional investigation is necessary. And I sensed after the game that the head coach made a calculated decision that maybe because he didn't want to send that message to his players, that at least externally he was giving the sense of, we're not going to turn this into a Wagnerian opera, even if it's very clear that the call, was missed. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think he was trying to say, we are not going to use this as there's nothing that we need to be worried about. We just need the refs to not screw us over. I don't think that's how he wanted to go about it. Make no mistake, he was upset about that call and said even today that they're still kind of looking into what exactly happened there and why it wasn't called and what that could mean going forward. I mean, the idea that it's reviewable would have to be something that goes through the NFL rule change process and the owners' meetings, all that stuff. So that's not going to happen right now. But they were certainly hot about it. I don't think there's any question about it. You saw it during the game and certainly saw some of that afterwards as well when I was in the locker room and able to just kind of chat with people a little bit. But I do think it was an effort to say this is not the crutch we are going to lean on to explain this one. It does change things if that becomes a penalty, and then you're still able to keep driving and maybe you have enough time to make something happen. But I don't think that's the main reason they lost this game by any means. It's a frustrating way to end it, and they don't get a chance. I'm sure that they are irritated by that part of it, but they did enough, whether penalties on offense, whether penalties on defense, whether it's lapses in coverage, not getting home, guys not getting to. I mean, the running game, I think, had 2.9 yards to carry last night. There were enough things there that I don't think they want to go down that road of saying this was the only thing that kept us back. I think that was very much O'Connell's messaging.
The fork in the road that the Vikings are facing is interesting because now you get the long time off, almost like another bye before hosting the Colts a week from Sunday after playing on a Thursday night in Los Angeles. And I think on the part of some fans, there is a belief of, look, we're 5-2. Hasn't been very pretty the last couple of weeks. The schedule is about to get more favorable. The quarterbacks we're going to be facing might not be quite as capable of fully exploiting some of those weaknesses, so we need to calm down. We all knew that if they could get to this soft and chewy, at least on paper, part of the schedule, that they'd be in pretty good shape. On the other hand, I think you could also say, but it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are we're going to win some games and not have the same defensive issues in large measure because these teams we're playing aren't as good, you can knock yourself out with that. But if your goal is greater, if your goal is, well, no, we've positioned ourselves now, we've ascended to a place where now you want to think in a weird year in the NFC, you might be able to make a little bit of a run. And to that extent, I think there is reason to worry because presumably when you get to the playoffs, you're not going to be playing the Jacksonvilles of the world. You're not going to be playing the Colts with a very young quarterback. You're going to be playing teams that probably have better quarterbacks who, if you haven't solved some of those issues that are now rearing their head defensively, will end up biting you in the butt again. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think these two losses are concerning in part because they were against teams that were in the playoffs last year and teams that have some equity. I mean, the Rams have not been as successful because they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, but that's a team that still has Matthew Stafford. It still has Puka Nacua. It has Cooper Kupp. Now that they get all of those guys back, that's probably a little bit different story. It does change things when you lose to those types of teams, I think in the same way that beating the 49ers and Texans and Packers helped people say, hey, this might actually be for real. It is those types of teams they will have to beat to go on any kind of run. O'Connell said it after the Lions game on Sunday. I think that's very much in their mind. And, you can run off a bunch of wins against the Colts, Jaguars, Texans, Bears portion of things, but you're not really going to get a ton of indication of what you can do against playoff caliber teams if you're not facing one of those types of teams for a while here. So it is, I think, very much something that these types of losses hold up a mirror in a way that others might not, and they will have to be better against these types of teams to make any kind of run. It's going to be quarterbacks that have been around. It's going to be teams that can come up with answers to what you do, and it comes down to executing it better and then probably having a counterpunch to some of the tendencies they're seeing offenses use against them here over the last couple of weeks. I think without that, you're not really talking about it being the type of run that it looked like it maybe could be, or at least people start to get excited about when they start 5-0.
Real quick before we wrap up, there's a lot of discussion today. This is going to happen when you lose even a single game, and you have so much difficulty getting any kind of pressure on the quarterback that the relative disappearance of Dallas Turner, which I think was a topic of conversation earlier in the week, and the comeback from the coaches was patience. I haven't given up on him, but we got some people playing in front of him really well. Well, when you have a game in which the guy playing in front of him doesn't get any pressures, and I think it was he was on the field like 35-40 plays, then it's natural to wonder, well, isn't there a place throwing him out there 10, 15 times? Is Turner that buried? Does he look that clueless in terms of understanding the system? Or how do we account for the fact that he suddenly is having much difficulty getting on the field? And could that change during this period where they're taking a second look at everything?
Yeah, it is a good question. And I asked O'Connell about it again today. And I think the times we've seen him a bit more on special teams, and he's made some errors there, whether it's penalties or coverage type things, that you're like, okay, it's not exactly the same, but it does give you a little bit of a window into how is he perceiving things, how is he reacting to situations, and what might that look like on defense. I think it does become a bigger conversation when Pat Jones has not been as dynamic as he was early on. I mean, initially you would have said, well, he's got 4 or 5 sacks. You have Van Ginkel, you have Grenard. We'd like to find a space for Turner. We just don't need him at the moment. But if those guys aren't getting home, I do think that spark of the speed he has, the ability we've seen even in the preseason to get around the edge, some of the athleticism that he shows is something they could use. And it does become one of those things where I wonder if it's just putting him on the edge and saying, we want you to beat a guy around the corner and keep it very simple. Isn't there a place to do that? I will be very curious to see it. And O'Connell said again today that, yes, patience, he's going to get on the field. But when they are not playing as well in front of him as they were, I do think it becomes a little bit more of a, well, okay, when are we going to see him and why aren't we to this point?
Standard Heating and Air Conditioning brings Ben Goessling to us each and every week. And he brings us today, just fresh back from his trip to California, a good insight and reportage on where the Vikings kind of go from here. We will chat next week. Thanks, as always. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Dan. I'm doing Gophers Homecoming tomorrow, so
good for you.
Should be a good time of rowing the boat.
There you go.
The Minnesota Daily buddies are in town this weekend, so we're gonna go do tailgating and do the whole thing, and should be fun. We'll get back on the winning column here with PJ and feel much better about ourselves.
I would not advise you storm the field if you beat Maryland, but nothing at this point will surprise me.
Do whatever you want.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah,
you know who won't be in the Minnesota Daily tailgate?
Who?
Aaron Gleeman, because the paper never accepted him, and he applied 9 times. Not that it comes up.
I think I was one of the people that maybe got hired in one of the times that he was applying. So
look out for
Gleeman. If he's out there, Gleeman, I'm sorry.
Look out for Gleeman. He's doing okay without you.
An angry Gleeman is a dangerous Gleeman, as somebody once said.
It is one of my favorite bits that he does.
It is outstanding, there's no question. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks, guys.
Top of the hour pause is coming up now. We have Lavelle in the 5 o'clock hour of the show, probably about 5:30 or so. Many more Vikings talking points to get to. And I'm assuming in the top 5, there might be a little bit on the red-hot Minnesota Wild and on the suddenly resurgent Minnesota Timberwolves. And what else?
World Series starts tonight. We'll talk about that. But, yeah, 2 out of 3, Dan. We got 2 out of 3 last night. Glass half full?
No, that would be 2/3 full. Yeah. Well, unless you grade on a curve and say
Vikings
the Vikings get more than 50% of the whole conversation.